right, thanks very much. Welcome to the May 12th edition of the Quaranteam Chats. It's been 8 weeks of these so far, and as you can tell, my haircut is getting worse and worse. I think I'm going to have to go back for another trim. We'll see if I do better the next time. And some housekeeping stuff before we get started. Yeah, we do have a lot of people who join us on Facebook Live and YouTube after the fact. So if you are watching after that and you want to get in on the chat next time, I encourage you to join. You can go to entreflow.com, and then right on the homepage, I'm highlighting a little link that we've got. It'll take you to the registration page and all the joining details there. So get right in there. It's not too late if somehow you're joining on Facebook Live right now. You can get in there. If not, register for the next one. We'd love to have you on. These chats are best when everyone can participate and get their questions in. So the agenda for today, we've got a lot of new people joining on the call, which is great. So our normal agenda is to run through the news, latest updates on federal programs or other people who are trying to do great things for the business community here. We're going to have a brief section on some top tips for things that we're thinking about. And I'll hand it over to Bronwen to do that. And then we're going to get into the meat of things, which is the upskilling our team for the new normal. As we go through this is meant as a discussion. It's not meant to be us just chatting and talking amongst ourselves. We'd love it if you could participate. There's 3 key ways. So in the chat, you can put in a question and make sure your setting is to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see your question come in as well. There's a Q&A feature in Zoom, so you can ask a question in there. And when we get to the right flow of the question, I'll make sure and ask that. And the third thing is you can raise your hand. So there's a function. If you go up to the top or the bottom of your screen and mouse over, you should be able to see the ability to raise your hand. And then we can open up the mic, or if you want to just say, hey, I've got a question in the chat, we can open up your mic and you can just speak to the panelists and the whole team. We love hearing your voices, so it's great if you can do that. Okay, intros. Before we go too much further, many of you know me. I'm Iain Rogers. I'm the founder of Entreflow Consulting Group. Been in business for a long time. I've got a couple of MBAs, a couple of kids, a couple of businesses that I've gone through journeys with. And I'm just really into supporting the business community. So happy to have a great panel with us today. Bronwen, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi guys. I'm Bronwen. I'm the HR practice manager at Entreflow. I'm responsible for the recruitment and HR consulting for small and medium-sized businesses all over. That's my true love is working with the small and medium-sized businesses.
Cool, thank you. Dustin, do you want to say hi?
Oh, I think my mic was muted there for a moment. Yes, my name is Dustin Meneses. I'm Senior Manager of Business Development and Sales over at PaymentEvolution. We were for those who don't know who we are, we're the first cloud payroll provider here in Canada. So we've been around for about 13 years, and just like Bronwen, share that love for small, medium, sized businesses as well as some large ones as well. And we're happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dustin. So that takes care of the regulars. And we're really excited to have Camilo and Stella on the line with us to join this chat about learning and development, because that's their expertise. So Camilo, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Camilo Rivera. I am product manager at Aprendo. So my main responsibility in Aprendo is to create great products for companies, organizations to help them get started into their learning strategy and help them, have a great experience in the process. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Camilo. Go ahead, Stella.
Okay, hi. Hi, everyone. It's good to see some familiar faces. Hi, Trina, Sharon, Robert, Oscar, everybody. So good to see you guys here. Thank you so much, Iain, for having me. My name is Stella. I have, hi, Sharon. I have a PhD in computer science. I have 20 plus years in L&D focusing on digital learning strategies. So yeah, that's me.
Sounds good. Thank you, Stella. And you're our first PhD on Quaranteam Chats.
Oh, yay. Hopefully
right.
not the last.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Okay, and last but certainly not least, I'd like to hand it over to Colin, our co-presenter is Startup Canada for these chats. Can you introduce yourself, Colin, and a little bit about what Startup Vancouver is all about?
Absolutely. Thanks, Iain. And I have never been mistaken as someone that has a PhD. I think that's been confirmed many times over. But I am an architect, if that's for good or for bad, but I am also an entrepreneur. And my involvement with Startup Vancouver is we are a volunteer-based organization of entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. So Startup Vancouver is one of almost 50 chapters of Startup Canada, who is the voice of the over 3 million entrepreneurs across the country. So our reason for being is we are that hub, that connective tissue that brings together all the entrepreneurs and gives them the support and access to each other, resources, events, kind of like what we're doing here. So we're very proud to be the co-presenter of Quaranteam Chats, and we love to continue this beautiful relationship on. And we are proud to announce that today at 12:30, we launch the first episode of our live stream, which is called What Keeps You Up at Night? Entrepreneurship during challenging times. So we're talking to entrepreneurs with a simple premise of what's freaking you out and what gets you excited. So two hosts, two guests, and half an hour, short and sharp. Keep it light, but also enlighten while being light. So yeah, happy to be here.
Sounds good, guys. And a quick intro about Entreflow. We're a boutique consulting firm. We do work with high growth companies, typically startups and small businesses across Canada. And we offer these kind of services. So accounting, HR, marketing. We're a licensed CPA firm, licensed recruitment firm, and a certified marketing agency. And we really just love putting in place people, processes, and systems to help companies grow. But these chats aren't about us. That's just for context. And we'd love to get into the news. Let's do the news. All right. So great stuff. A lot of companies who have applied for the CEWS, Qs or CEWS, are expecting to receive their first payments in this week. So if you haven't done that, or if you want to check on that, go to your CRA My Business account. Or check in with your accountant, because your accountant can do that for you. The government, Trudeau was on announcing that they would be extending this program until August. So that's great for some businesses that will experience a longer sort of downturn. Also announced just last week, Innovate BC, in partnership with IRAP, have announced their BC Fast Pilot program. And so this is basically for early stage companies that have a technology that's been in development, and they need to do an on-site setup installation with a customer. They can get up to $200,000 for doing that effort. So I encourage you to check that out. The Canada Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. I know we were hoping to have some updates for you guys on this one this week, but unfortunately, we said sometime mid-May we would have some more details, and we're not quite there yet. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully, we'll have something for next week. Same goes for the co-lending program from the BDC. So if you wanted to apply for funding through your commercial bank, the BDC would top up some of that loan. Thus making it easier for both the BDC and the commercial bank to service those loans. So again, looking for details as the banks roll this program out amongst their services. Okay, we had some great news to hear last week for some of us that have been cooped up inside and sort of wondering what to do, that they're starting to come out with plans about the BC economy opening up and what's that going to mean and how we're going to be allowed to socially interact. So I've got a link in there, and some changes are expected to come within the next few days. So we'll see how all that goes. And then last thing, it's sort of a footnote, because our audience on most of these chats are small and medium-sized companies. However, large businesses with over 300 million of revenue, they're getting some government dollars too. So that's the LEEFF. acronyms are great. That was announced just yesterday, actually, and so some details about that will emerge. By the way, guys, all the details on these links are going to be available posted after the session. So we'll put them up on our website, and we normally post the slides, and that you can click through the links and get to all this stuff in here. Normally I would sort of pause and see if there are any questions about this stuff, but there haven't been too many big updates here. So I'm just going to say, if you've got a question about how these programs might apply to you, then feel free to just type it into the chat. If there's something you're thinking about, do I qualify for this or that, type it into the chat or the Q&A section, and we'll try and get to it as we go through the next little bits here. Okay. Anyone on the panel have anything else that I missed from the news for this week?
No,
Nope.
it's very comprehensive.
Okay, good stuff. Yeah, and anyone on the line, if you see an update that I missed, then please just put it in the chat. We're all in this together, so community sourcing information here. All right, I'll turn it over to Bronwen, because Bronwen, I think you had some tips prepared for us for communication. So go ahead, take us through it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just top tips for this week that we wanted to cover was effective communication. So, especially with teams, continuing to work remotely, if that's, even though the economy is going to be starting to open up and offices may be starting to open up, if you are choosing to keep your team virtually still for a little while longer, ensuring that the communication methods are still effective is going to be important. We just have some super quick tips here. First one is to kind of use one method of communication, whether it's Slack, text messaging, email, and make sure that all employees across the organization are on the same page there. If you start to have too many methods of communication happening, it can get confusing, and I lost messages and missed messages. That's not to say that you should only be using Slack or only be using text messaging or only be using email, but this is more for internal communication than external communication. There's definitely a reason for using email versus like instant messaging type tools. Tip number 2 is to be as descriptive as possible. So I think 8 weeks back, maybe in our first week, talked a little bit about asynchronous communication. So in your communication methods, ensuring that the messaging that you're sending out is very clear as to what you are looking for, especially if you're passing along a task of some sorts. So it could be, this is the task, this is when I need it done by. If you have any issues, here's who you can reach out to, so that there's not a lot of back and forth communication happening between yourself and the person that you're passing along the messaging to. This just helps with kind of that effectiveness piece, and just ensuring that everybody knows what's going on, and low risk of confusion there. Top tip number 3 is to provide clear deadlines. So, even if you're maybe not able to be as descriptive as possible on your messaging, just ensure that any tasks that are being sent over have a clear deadline. This is a hard stop due for Wednesday at 5 o'clock, or this can be done over the next couple weeks, but end of May would be great, just so that the team knows priority wise and when they need to kind of be working on things. Top tip number 4 for those that are using instant messaging platforms, internally we like to have designated channels for different projects. So this might be something that you can implement into your team, and this just really helps with reducing some of the clutter of notifications that happens. If you have just one channel that's talking about absolutely everything that's going on, it might increase the chance of team members ignoring those messages as they don't feel that they may be related to them, or lost in the, as messages start to scroll up, you could be missing some important information. So just ensure that whatever method of communication you're choosing, that you have it set up in the best way possible to ensure that the team is not getting too confused or missing important messages. That's my top tips for today.
Thanks, Bronwen.
Yeah.
No, those are great. I've been practicing the asynchronous communication thing over the last few weeks, and it's a really powerful tool to use. All right. So let's get into this one. and I think it starts off with some context. So Bronwen, this was your definition. Do you want to expand on it?
Yeah, so we kind of just wanted to start with like, what is learning and development for those of you who may not be familiar with learning and development, and kind of how it fits into the HR strategy. So learning and development, just super quick, is the practice of working with groups and individuals within an organization to increase particular skills and knowledge, and then using them, also teaching them how to use those skills in their position. So this is, skills such as Microsoft Office tools, or maybe something a little bit more specific on the learning side for professional development, maybe learning how to sell, which is something I've been working on for the past little bit here. So, just continuous learning and development of an employee's skills and knowledge.
Cool. Sounds good. And, any of the experts on the line want to weigh in?
Yeah, am I totally wrong?
It's a simple working definition, I think,
yeah.
To start with. Key benefits here.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the key benefits that I just, came to mind for me for learning and development is morale and retention. More often than not, especially nowadays, most employees are looking to kind of make a change in their position every 2 years. Is pretty standard. So, that change doesn't have to mean necessarily that they're moving up in their position, to a more senior, ranking. So it's either moving out of the organization, moving up within the organization, or maybe learning some new skills to better their position and take on some more responsibility. So, this is definitely one way that you can do this, so that the, employees are feeling as though they're still progressing within their career without really having to make too much of a change there. Productivity and effectiveness, definitely skills, especially, those Microsoft Office or other software skills especially would help with that, the productivity and effectiveness side of things. There's also probably, the ability to think outside of the box from all of the learning that they're doing is going to help with coming up with new ideas to do things. And, helps the team as a whole. Adaptability is definitely another key benefit. So like I said, if your team is going out and doing, not even your team, the whole managers, owners, everybody should really be buying into the learning and development side here. But you're able to kind of adapt to the new tech, new markets, and new methods. The more that everybody's going out and learning, the better collaboration and brainstorming that can happen there. And then from a succession planning side as well, in the HR strategy there, working with your team to get them the right skills and knowledge to move them up within the organization. If you have a very clear succession plan, somebody starting in as an assistant and moving into, maybe a coordinator type role, into manager, into senior management, there's definitely skills and knowledge associated to those moves within the organization. If you got a super rock star person who's great with your culture, they really, bought into the business, you want to make sure to kind of keep them around as long as you can. And, putting that good succession plan in place with a good development plan will help them get there.
Cool, it makes sense. I really like that thinking, because I've seen far too many times, especially in a young and growing organization, where there's one rock star individual who knows, the technology that they're developing really, really well, and they're the only person who can do that work. So it really makes sense to train up other people or to have other people learn. I like that, and I like what you're saying also as well about. This comes really back to what a lot of companies are doing, pivoting to find new markets. And so it occurs to me that, we're having to think about learning and development to go after new markets and new opportunities. But also, just if we make learning and development a core competency in the organization, that we're then able to pivot more effectively the next time, right?
Yeah. And we have Christina here just added a super great point. Another key benefit for the company would also be that it tends to attract top talent in the first place. And that's absolutely a very good point. Companies like, or employees or candidates like to see companies that are, bought into their employees' growth. So that's definitely a key benefit for getting your top talent in.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you going to invest in me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So this is a big slide. Tell us all this. This isn't the only thing that HR does, but how does it fit in? And how should we figure out the priorities here?
Yeah, that is a big slide for sure. So learning and development, like within the HR strategy here, really kind of fits into the, as it's outlined here, into the onboarding, training, growth, and so much more. So, it's definitely, there's lots of, learning management systems out there that can help with your onboarding, training, and growth internally. Onboarding just on its own is generally a large hurdle to overcome in any organization. So any kind of initial learning and development that you can do with new employees coming on to help them feel comfortable in their role when they first start is definitely great. And then just continuous training and growth within their position to, continue to grow some rock star employees and again, help with that succession planning. The other, parts to the HR strategy here is the, leadership development. It helps, it moves into workforce planning and organizational development. There's a lot of things here in the HR strategy, but, learning and development, I think is something that you can get started even if you have a small team and continue to grow it and add on to it as your team grows as well. And it's kind of ever changing there in your strategy.
Sounds good. It sounds like there's a balance then, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you have to strike between all these things to be successful. So we have to think about hiring, and we have to think about what kinds of roles we need to have and how we're going to structure the
Mm-hmm.
organization. But we have to balance that with learning and development and how people move through the organization too. Okay. I'll just pause there for a second. Any comments, Stella or Camilo, on how this fits into the bigger picture?
Yeah, actually, I have a slightly different take on L&D.
Okay.
I think it's been a changing and evolving definition and scope. I think a lot of the training activities and tasks, that's still very much needed. But I think nowadays, in my experience, I see a lot more of L&D. It's embracing a more holistic view of how it aligns with the business. So I don't necessarily see L&D fitting in with HR strategy. I see L&D as looking at the whole business, right? At the organizational level, and understanding how can L&D directly support business goals? How can it bring direct business impact? So to me, if I'm looking at your slide, I would expand that definition of L&D to include performance management, to include leadership development, to include workforce planning, organizational development, etc.
Mm-hmm. So really the box goes around the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think this is in our industry, I think I think we're facing a bit of an identity crisis, as you will. That even should we still call it L&D, right? Is it even inclusive enough of explaining it to people what we do? Because there are different models of L&D. There are L&D that are very centralized, that sits under HR. The L&D that's independent, that sits outside HR, and there's much more of a distributed model that's scattered around across the organization. So so I think it's a changing definition, and of course there's no one size fits all model.
Very cool, thank you. And we had some comments on the line as well about learning and development being the champion for creating learning culture.
Yeah.
So beyond individual development, but
exactly.
Real work performance on the job.
Yeah, and you talk about, I think Christina mentioned about this is, also to help attract talent, and to further that thought, it's to future-proof your company.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. I work here at Aprendo. We work very close with our clients, and we see that some organizations they take the learning and development as part of their growth strategy. So some companies we work with, like, they cannot even open a new branch if they don't have their onboarding process for that particular branch, right? So it's pretty much needed on depending on what are your metrics and what is growth for you. Mm-hmm.
Very good, thank you. So why now? Why this conversation now? I wanted to bring it up and I wanted to focus on it for all the reasons that we just talked about. But just for some context here, we've been having these Quaranteam chats for a few weeks now. We had another chat around talent acquisition and how people are thinking about changing their teams and bringing new talent on board. And the answer that came back is that yes, there is some of that, but also the focus seems to be on keeping the same team. So trying to keep the team intact through a crisis, that seems to be what leaders are wanting to do. And it's a good move. It's a safe move because you've got a lot of change to deal with. And you've already got some relationships that are built and structures in the company that already work. So then it means that the organization has to take on a lot of new skills, a lot of new knowledge to affect the pivots that the leaders in these organizations want to see. So if we're talking about a pivot, and if we're talking about surviving through crisis, and to Colin's point, the next crisis after that, then we really need to be thinking about learning and development. So the first question really is, in this age of uncertainty, how should a leader of a small, medium-sized business, how should they know what skills are needed and who needs that development? I'll go to you first, Stella.
Sure. The way I approach this is back to what I'm saying about L&D supporting the business, at a holistic level. I think I like to reverse engineer this process. Okay. So what I mean by that is you start with understanding and looking at like what business impact are you trying to have, right? What business results? What are your goals as a business? Not about learning or anything. Just at the end of it, what are you trying to accomplish? So once you're clear on that, then you have to understand what are your success metrics. Like, how do you measure that you actually get there? And once you know that, then you have to identify what kind of skills that you need from your people in order to accomplish these metrics, in order to be successful. And then from there, you have to understand then, like, in order to get these skill sets, what kind of learning you need to provide in order for them to acquire the skills. So that's how I always approach it when I'm engaged with businesses to work with, like, how do you identify, how do you develop people? Like, basically the first thing is like, what are you trying to do as a business?
Mm-hmm. So good. I love that you're starting with metrics. As a person who runs a firm that does CFO services,
I'm a
very
data
much
person.
Focused on metrics, right?
Yeah, I'm a data geek. So yeah, of course, and it just makes sense, right? Like you have to use evidence, you have to use facts, you have to use, like, data. For me, it's not just numbers; it's just information. It's evidence. And I know folks here today, quite a number of you guys are very much into that database decision-making process. So love to hear from you as well.
Cool. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we're the business leaders. We've identified a pivot that we want to make in the business, and now we're going to go after a new market. So maybe we need to, understand a new sort of regulatory environment and a different way of selling. into the business. Then I'm assuming that we're going to somehow approach the people on the team and somehow figure out what they're good at and what they would need to get to where they need. So is that very much a manager employee kind of conversation, or how do you do that at scale?
Yeah, well, I think you have to start with drawing a line on the sand, right? To see, like, do inventory, if you will, of skill sets, of competencies, and you have to define them, right? You have to say, okay, we need people, like, let's say, I think Bronwen talks about sales training, and let's say for a successful sales team, you need to have very good verbal communication skills, or you need to have great visual presentation skills, right? Like but what does that look like? What is okay? What is good? What's great? What is novice? What's intermediate? What's expert level? You have to define levels of expertise or competencies, and you have to put and some sort of assessment, some sort of measurement around each level to then able to say, okay, you have get to this level, you're at mastery, or you're at competent level. So you have to have a model or a grid or some sort of metrics to measure that skill sets. Did I answer your question? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, no, I think so. It starts with, first of all, how do you ask the question, right? But I think you're exactly right. Is to say, what skills do you need? So you have to understand where they're at in their level before you understand where to get them, and define those levels first. So,
I think sometimes when you're pivoting, two people already have the skills, you have to identify what's transferable as well. I think sometimes people, nowadays we say upskill and reskill as if they were the same thing, but they're different, right? Upskills is perhaps something you already have that you need to supercharge that. And reskill it's more of the pivot, is more of, like, I can give you an example. In Ontario, the government is recruiting our work librarians and museum workers to be home care assistants. I mean, that's a pivot, you know, that is not even like supercharge your skill a little bit up. And how do you train people from being a librarian into a home care worker? But that doesn't mean they don't have some existing skills that's transferable, right? But then you have to be able, the first conversation should be, I think the first conversation is, do you want that pivot, right? Because some people might not want it. Second question would be, where are your existing skill sets, right? What do you have currently? And look at what are the skill sets that are needed for a home care assistant, and see if there's any crossovers, if there's any match, any discrepancies. You have to have two kind of competencies or skill sets so you can mash that and see what, if it connects or not, and look at the gaps.
Sounds good. Let's get into, we had a question on the line, which was about how you obtain the knowledge. Is it done through a formal course, or how is this approached? Which is kind of the next slide that I had. So it was about perfect intro. Thank you, William. Really, how is this done? How do people learn? What are the ways how should leaders think about the way that people learn? And maybe how is it different in a COVID crisis?
We have 60 years of literature on how people learn, and we still don't know.
We still don't know? Okay.
Pretty much. I mean, there's a lot of theories out there, and I think I think the takeaways is it's highly contextual, right? It's not a stable characteristic. It changes over the course of your life. It changes depending on situations. It changes according to what you're trying to learn. This is all different. Of course, I think what I always like to encourage people to look at the physiological component of it. Neuroscience gives us great insight on how people learn. For example, we talk about how is it different during stress or crisis than normal time. Our brain is designed to respond during stressful situation. I mean, this is thousands of years of evolution that will have tunnel vision when we're stressed. So you don't want to give people a lot of information to process because we zero in on very essential information, right? There is a book called Scarcity. It talks about how poverty impacts your brain. How does it impact the way you behave? It talks about under stressful situation, under crisis, your brain literally takes a hit on its bandwidth. So you are not able to process information like you normally would. So the implication for design learning, for example, is that you have to distill your information to the essential. You might not want to put on very long drawn courses or learning material that goes on forever. You might want to sequence your activities differently. You might want to repeat the information over time. There is a neuroscience research on memory and how we deal with memory. As adult learner, we tend to learn better if the new knowledge is relating to existing information or existing experiences, right? That's the whole constructivist approach. So there's a lot of information out there on how we learn differently and how we learn during normal time and during crises.
Absolutely makes sense, and I definitely can relate to that. Feeling in stress or under pressure, and just trying to skip through and not getting the full benefit of the material that I'm trying to absorb. So I've felt that.
Although on the flip side, under stress, you actually memorize or you remember things more vividly than under normal time. So that's also something to think about, right?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go for it.
Stella, is there, you mentioned that there might be the inability to retain the information when you are under stress or remember it more vividly. Is there a percentage that we know of right now of the ability to retain information, while under stress? Is there a statistic that we know of at all, or is that too?
No, there research on that. I have to dig it up for you. I can't remember on top of my head, but yeah, definitely there's I think research on memory would actually tell you that.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in our organization where we're trying to, we're going on 9 weeks of this current pandemic that we're in, and it's for sure, there's times where you're thinking like, oh, I wonder if it's a matter of our landscape, or if it's a matter of, various other, factors that are affecting us that are affecting maybe memory or something of that nature. And we're trying to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that too, like during this time, let's say if you're trying to push communications or learning or anything to your staff, you also have to understand there's technological limitations as well. Like not everybody's set up the same way at home, and so it's not necessarily just the physiological responses that are limiting our ability to learn. It could be contextual. It could just be a lot of people are not used to remote work. That takes a different skill set to even structure your day, right? And so that's a limitation, or that could be an advantage in itself, because I also have people that tell me they really enjoy online learning because they had chronic headaches and they can rest in between headaches, and then they can learn a little bit of nugget at a time they didn't feel well enough to learn. So
yeah, it's great perspective. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. For this next one, I want to go to Camilo. So there's a number of leaders who are trying to develop new training programs quickly or modify existing ones, while at the same time doing all this great stuff that that Stella was talking about, making sure that you can track where people are at in their level. And so I wonder if you can comment about technology solutions for setting up a program really quickly and keeping track of things.
Well, we work with different industries, and each company is so different. What I see what we see that's helping a lot is how, when you want to launch a new program, you actually involve all of the people that it's actually that's going to be affected by the goals of that program. So just to think on idea like the fastest way, or the fastest programs that we've seen out, and they like maybe in a couple of weeks even, is based on the field learning, or gathering experiences that happen on the job, and then bringing up, just creating a collaborative space where they can share those experiences and learn but actually bringing that experience into a learning area where they can share or receive feedback from senior managers in the organization. So that's probably the fastest approach that we see normally going on. If there is a new project, then create an area for learning on that specific project, especially if it's a new challenge that you're facing, especially if it's a new approach that you're doing within the organization. So if there's something new, there's normally, if you're taking on a specific change within the organization, there's not only that actually, is the leader. So the strategy and how learning is implemented is to support that change. But also the most successful ones we've seen is where actually leaders drive that change, right? I mean, and they support also the learning programs.
Cool, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And it's going to be really impactful, right? If the people on the ground doing the work feel that they're involved in these experiences, and then a training program is put together around that, that's going to be a lot more impactful and more well adopted, right? Than if it's done in an ivory tower somewhere, right?
Yeah. And sorry, Iain, just to add to that, especially like when you're taking into consideration everybody that it impacts, it also may change the way that the program is rolled out. Because, if you're a potentially senior manager, you may not know everything that's going on down on the, lower level positions. So, getting everybody's input will really has a good way of creating a great program for everybody.
Cool.
Yeah, that's right. And even like when I mentioned to be inclusive, if we want to be inclusive, you can also look for options to also include your clients. And like if you're working with a specific a distribution channel, also include your distributors. So bring them to that experience as well, and and get feedback from them, and just keep improving the experience for them. So maybe the goal is to reduce like a specific sales cycle, or to reduce like an onboarding program for a new distribution channel, or whatever the challenge is. It can be targeted if better through the collaboration of all the parties involved.
Yeah, it's amazing how many learning programs or courses or activities are designed without the input of the actual target learners. Like,
Oh yes, exactly. It's like, just throw a PowerPoint and then they'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think just to add to that is, as adult learners, we learn best when we understand why we're doing it, right? Like there needs to be a point. It's not, especially for workplace learning, it doesn't mean to an end. So we have to be very clear on that with the target learners that we're trying to push this to.
Sounds good. I just want to take a second to acknowledge Taruna. Thanks for a great comment and a link on how people learning in the brain. So that's in the chat. Check it out if you haven't already, and we'll make sure and post that link as well. Thanks, Taruna.
Thank you.
This is the other extreme I just threw up there. The brand of shoe is not not accurate here.
I thought this is the commercial break.
No. But this is another attitude which I've seen unfortunately happen in especially small and very scrappy companies. Is look, we don't have time to train you. Just figure it out. And that can work really well in the startup kind of environment where everybody is built that way, but doesn't work very well for all people in all cases. And I just kind of wonder, as people are maybe moving too quickly, and some people are experiencing this, is how should we approach the just learn it, just figure it out kind of situation? Is that appropriate in some cases? And how do we recover from that if it wasn't appropriate, but we did it anyway?
Do you want to go, Stella?
I was trying to give you some time, Camilo.
I was thinking.
Okay, I'd be happy to start. You know what? Like, it's totally fine if people just like, we want you to figure this out as you go along, but just don't call it learning. You know, like that's to me. Yeah, there is something called learning by doing or experiential learning, but that doesn't mean there's no thoughts behind the design of it. You know, I think the difference is throwing people into the deep end and say, you know, we need the tires to be changed. Go figure this out. That is not learning because there's no design behind it, right? If you think about that, learning by doing or experiential learning, you still require a structure. You still have to reflect on the experience. You still need to understand the context, and you need to have tools to support you for doing that, whether it's a menu or a YouTube video or some other guidance. And most importantly, you need feedback, because how do I know if I change it correctly, right? To go back to the tire example, I suppose if I start driving and a tire falls apart, that is one feedback.
That's feedback.
That is feedback. But ideally, you don't want to get to that point. Ideally, you want to have expert feedback at the time you need it, right? And it needs to be iterative, because learning is incremental, and you need to, you know, go through this iterative process, which I think a lot of the startup people will understand. You know, it's not just blindly trial and error. Each trial, you get some insight, you feed it back into your feedback loop, and you try it again with that informed insights to get better at it. It's very similar to learning by doing.
I like it. It's a good thought there. And sort of comments on the line about sink or swim approach could be very expensive. It's so it
exactly.
might be tempting. So invest a little bit into at least the structure around figure it out yourself. You can figure out this part, but we have to reflect on it. Sorry, Camilo, I cut you off. You were going to say?
Oh, no, I was just thinking like the lack of identity right now, the learning and development has as well, because it has impacts in different parts, right? Like it's, like it can really, like, especially if you don't know what you're going to learn, you have to start putting something in place. Like, you know, if it's so fast, or if it's something that is changing often, well, you have to start somewhere. But at the same time, all of these are resources for your teammates, or for your clients, for your whoever is involved in the objectives that you want to reach. So as long as you know where you're going and what's needed, you can keep building on that knowledge. So you might start with zero, but then the important thing is, like, you receive feedback, and then you improve, then you identify what are the keys that will make your teams more successful, and then put more time into those specific contents or specific interactions that you need to have with your team. So it's something that you build up over time. It's not something like you create once and then you forget about it. And that's why people sometimes say, it's like, well, learning is like, it's not for us, it's too slow, right? Or it doesn't really fit into our organization, right? So I think it's a bit the opposite, because you, at the end, you are actually, like, if you're in charge of changing the strategy or pivoting, at the end, you still need to train whoever is going to work with you, right? Like, you still have to show them how to do stuff. So it's time that you're going to put there anyways. So just make sure that you build that knowledge that you're sharing as an asset for the organization, that they can, you can leverage on that often, more than one time.
And I think Christina online has a good point about that sometimes the most important skill building may also be to help people deal with uncertainty, being adaptive and agile. I think that was a really good point.
Being agile for sure.
Oh, can I add a little bit to what Camilo was saying too? And when you talk about, there's no time to learn, there's no time to create learning material, there's so many types of learning out there. I would encourage you not to think about just learning as in one-time event or as a course or a program. I think L&D, the language has to change as well, right? You want to think about learning as it's much more modular. You want to think about like collaboration, institutional knowledge, peer knowledge, peer share, like that sort of thing. And a lot of companies I work with, they curate content. You don't necessarily have to create it from scratch. There are a lot of content out there you can curate. There are content you can buy off the shelf. You can hire external vendors to build them for you. There's a combination of things you can do to create and put together content quickly and to support your people without what traditionally we think of it as a whole learning program.
Yeah, and you mentioned YouTube videos and stuff before. That there might be already free content out there that you can just, like you said, curate and put it into your own thing. E-learning.
Yeah, content curation it's been really big for the past couple of years. So I think it's even more now than before. So yeah. Yeah,
and it sounds like the theme of what I'm getting here is to have the structure and to think of it as a program, not let's put a course together, but have a structure for ongoing learning. And it could be, I threw a couple of ideas up here, but there's lots of e-learning going on. It could be private lessons. It could just be reading articles and watching YouTube videos. It doesn't have to be a formal classroom training environment, right?
No, I think sometimes informal works better, because it's more, it's just in time when you needed it. Like, think about in your office, if you, I think to Bronwen's example about how do you use Microsoft Excel, do you ask a colleague? Sometimes you ask a colleague, right? Hey, how do you create this, table or whatever? Like, you sometimes just there's an Excel expert in my company. I would ask that person. That's informal learning.
Absolutely. I like that. Okay, we're coming up on time, and there's a last couple little questions, and I admit they're a little bit softball questions for you and Camilo. So Camilo, tell us about LMS and tracking people's training and learning and development, and does a small company need an LMS, and what's that all about? When should they think about what they need for an LMS?
So the answer is yes, they do need an LMS.
Do they need a Prendo learning management system? Is that the one that they should use?
They should look into Prendo for sure. Yeah, definitely. But on the tracking side, you should look for an LMS that is flexible, that allows you to have control of the content that you upload, and also that allows you to bring all the players in reaching the goals that you're looking for, right? So that's really key. So not someone like, it's not that so you don't want to build strong dependency, like especially with the content. Like if you want to curate the content or you're working with the content internally, you know, you need to build more like a partnership with the company that you're working with. So you need to build a partnership with your content providers, a partnership with the LMS, because you might need to integrate the system with something else to make it work. Like you might need to tie it like with an HR software, you might need to tie it with a payroll system, or you need to tie it with like an incentive program, right? So you need to have something that is flexible. And then on tracking, well, you can track content, and you know, a good LMS should give you all the analytics to see how your audience is engaging and how much interest they have in the content. But also, I think at the end of the day, you want to track the results on the strategy that you have and the goals that you're building, right? So how is learning impact maybe customer service, or how learning is impacting sales? For example, we have one of our clients is a pharmaceutical company, and they put a survey out every quarter, for example, just to customer satisfaction. And the results of that survey has a direct, you know, the feedback and everything has a direct impact on how they improve their own customer satisfaction training, right? So it's an ongoing, you know, and it's something that you build up over time. So you need to look for a technology that's flexible enough for the organization, and also that fits with your budget, for sure, right? Like that's the first thing.
For sure, sounds good. And Stella, if people are looking for, if they don't know where to start with learning and development, I'm assuming they can contact you or someone like you to get some help.
Oh yeah, I'm always engaging people on my LinkedIn and on Twitter, and of course happy to chat with people individually as well. I mean, all the conversations today are really great. I'm just trying to look at the chat discussions, and like, somebody asked about what's the future of L&D and future of learning. I'm like, that is like another hour of discussion by itself.
I feel like we could have gone today for a whole other hour, and I would have been engaged and excited about the whole thing. Before we go, I wanted to put up the contact details for everyone on the call. Stella, I had just a personal address for you, so I didn't put it on the slide.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Search for me on LinkedIn.
Look, there it is, magic. Yeah. I had a second version of the slide just in case you said,
wow.
that's fine, put it up. So.
Yeah, that's wow. This is just in time. This is amazing.
So yeah, go ahead. If you want to contact, Bronwen's a great person to talk to. Anything about general HR, particularly in small companies. Great person to reach out to and ask. And she can bring in experts in all the different sorts of disciplines. Mm-hmm. Please reach out to Camilo or Stella about your LMS or learning and development needs. Great people to work with. And finally, just before we go, Colin wanted to mention, I think you already mentioned a call coming up today in about a half an hour, which is the What Keeps You Up at Night. And,
I did. I just put the link in the chat there.
Perfect.
Great.
Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
And coming up on Quaranteam Chat, so next week we're talking more of a finance sort of topic. It's early data on who's getting funded. So we've got a couple of great people who are involved in commercial lending and venture debt and that sort of thing, and also keeping track of what all the angel investors and VCs are doing and gathering data on that. So that's going to be fascinating. And following that, an HR and a little bit of finance related talk about cybersecurity. A lot of people are working remotely. What does that mean both for company risks, security risk, financial risk, and also culture? So some great chats coming up. And I'll just leave everyone's contact information up on the slide while I say thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stella and Camilo and Dustin, for being our guest panelists here today. And to everyone who joined the chat, Thanks for your great comments and questions on the line. These things are always best when we get lots of those coming in. And I'm very much looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you so
fun.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.